Wadjet Eye Games, an indie video game developer, has been around for over a decade now, founded in 2006 by Dave Gilbert. And no, he is not related to Ron Gilbert. But despite that, I have never played any of their adventure games before, until I picked up and played their 2018 title, Unavowed, about a year later after its release. Sure, I did know about games like Primordia, Gemini Rue, Shardlight, and the Blackwell series, and I do want to play them at some point, but I never noticed that they were all either developed or published by Wadjet Eye Games. Unavowed was the first game to expose me to their style of adventure games. And what a good game it was to start with. You could argue that Unavowed was the best adventure game of 2018, as it won many awards in Aggie Game Awards of that year. It was selected as the best adventure game of 2018, and was the best game in 4 other categories, namely story, drama writing, voice acting, and the best traditional adventure game. So my expectations of Unavowed were very high when I first started playing it. So did it meet them? Were all those awards well deserved? My name is Hyperos, and these are my thoughts on Unavowed. The story starts with the protagonist being exorcised on top of a building under heavy rain. Apparently there's a demon inside you, and the 2 people with you are trying to force it out. The exorcist then asks for your name, gender and past. This is where you get to decide your character's name, gender, and pick from one of the 3 professions: actor, cop, or bartender, each with their own prologues about how your character got possessed. Once you have answered all their questions and played through your prologue, the demon spirit is banished out of the protagonist's body. Unfortunately though, while you are free from the demon's control, you are also wanted by the New York police for murdering many people during the past year while being possessed. After dealing with another little incident the very same night, you are invited to join the Unavowed, an organization that deals with supernatural cases and creatures that cause trouble to the everyday ignorant mundane people. So imagine Men in Black, but instead of dealing with literal illegal aliens from outer space, they deal with fantasy creatures from other realms. Once you have settled in, you are told that supernatural activity has greatly increased in your city of New York recently, catching the Unavowed off guard, thanks to the demon who had possessed you. So you, along with your Unavowed colleagues, must investigate multiple cases around the city and eventually learn the demon's motives for causing all this trouble and stop its master plan, whatever it is. Right off the bat, there is 3 things that I really like about Unavowed. First one being the story itself. The story is simply excellent. It's the kind of detective story with magic and supernatural elements that sucks you into its world. It has its sad, tragic, touching, serious, shocking and funny moments. You make tough decisions in a game that, at least slightly, affects the ending, and most of them are very tough choices where, inevitably, someone gets shorter end of the stick or even die. And considering how some of the characters can help you on later on in the game, you may want to think twice before killing off even the biggest douchebags you encounter. There's also a very unexpected and clever plot twist regarding the protagonist that made me see him, or her, and the demon very differently. I don't want to spoil it for you, so just go and play the game yourself. All you need to know is that the story is great, and what also makes the story so good are the other 2 things I really like. The second thing being the world building. It's very down-to-earth kind of fantasy setting that doesn't go too far with magic and is more subtle about it. Kinda like Harry Potter, where the world of magic and fantasy creatures are kept as a secret from the normal mundane world. If I'm not mistaken, Unavowed even takes place in the same universe as Wadjet Eye's Blackwell series. I like how the game gives small bits of information about the supernatural world and creatures, and doesn't go full exposition mode explaining everything to us to the last detail. They tell you just enough to let you know how the world works and what the rules are, and leaves out just enough to leave you curious and wanting to know more. I especially like the small moments where their companions are chatting with each other on a subway train or out in the field, and talk about their past experiences, the world, its creatures, and Mandana occasionally tells small bits of the distant unknown history of New York with supernatural creatures in them and how they used to be like centuries ago.
KK wants to know about unicorns. Are they real too?
They were. They were hunted to extinction centuries ago.
Oh, that's a shame.
No, it is not. Unicorns were violent, short-tempered, carnivorous monsters. They would gore anything without provocation. Be glad the world is rid of them.
You just broke a little girl's heart.
None of that information is important to the main story in any way, but they are a very nice touch, indicating how only a small fraction of the supernatural world is shown to us in the game, making the universe feel bigger, deeper and more real. So I recommend you don't double click and fast travel too much, cause you just might miss them. And thirdly, the characters. They are perhaps the best thing about Unavowed. The characters from the companions to the supporting cast are so well written and voice acted that they felt like real people to me. The companions especially are all interesting, have their own strengths and special abilities, troubled pasts and problems of their own you learn more about as you progress in the main story. Eli is a fire mage, so he can cast and control fire and is the knowledgeable bookworm of the team. Mandana is a half human and half Jinn who is a walk-in lying detector, being able to tell if someone is lying. She is physically the strongest and is good with the sword. Vicky is a former cop with connections to the police and has a gun. And Logan is a bestower, a person who communicates with ghosts and helps them to move on, and is accompanied by a spirit guide, KK, a ghost of about a 10-year-old girl. Some of the cases you try to solve in the game become very personal to the companions as well, so much so that the main protagonist, him or herself, takes the back seat in a few occasions and feels more like an observer. He or she is not anywhere near as well developed as the other characters. Hell, the protagonist is not even voice acted, unlike every other character in the game. Which is understandable considering how you have the option of playing not only as male or female but also as a former actor, cop or bartender, each with their own unique dialogue options. Which does give the protagonist at least some background and personality. But he or she feels like a blank slate compared to the companions, although there is a good reason for it story-wise. You just have to pick up the game and play it yourself to find out what it is, because saying more would be spoilers. So to me, the four companions are just as important main characters of the story as the protagonist and not just mere sidekicks. I like all of the four companions here, but my favorite is Eli, the fire mage, voiced by Frank Todaro.
I'd buried myself down here, studying old books, experimenting with spells, trying to come to terms with everything. Then Mandana dragged me out to the park. We fed the birds. It was nice, normal, ordinary. I felt human, and I can never forget that. Not ever.
Who is starting to become one of my favorite voice actors because not only I liked his performance in Unavowed, I also recognized his voice from Catty Rain, where he voiced one of my favorite characters there as well.
Joseph was the best friend I ever had. We grew up together, married our high school sweethearts together, went to war together.
Eli as a character is very likable family man, formerly an accountant during his mundane days. One of the missions in the game hits very close to home for Eli, making it very personal and one of the most impactful and touching ones in the game. I still got the feels even during my second playthrough. I also like how he's a fire mage who can do a lot more than just throw fireballs, like fire reading texts that were burned at some point in the past. And we all love fire puns, don't we?
Fire away.
The main reason why it took me this long to make this video was because Unavowed is special in a sense that I felt like I had to play the game at least twice before I could give a solid opinion of it. I even started a third playthrough, but mostly to see the last prologue. I first played as a female actor and then as a male cop and made sure to take different companions with me to each mission. You always pick 2 companions on the subway train to go with you, although you must always have at least one of the 2 veteran members, Eli and or Mandana, with you, since they are more experienced with this stuff, while you and the other 2 companions you recruit are just rookies. Every companion brings something unique and different approaches to your case. Mandana, for example, can tell if someone is telling the truth, which of course is very helpful in detective-like work. And she is physically the strongest, so she can be asked to do some heavy lifting or climbing as well. And Logan can communicate with ghosts and ask them for more information that will help us solve the case before helping them to move on. In a couple of occasions, certain companions are required to be in your party for story reasons, and so they are called in and they are switched with one of the companions already in your party. But that happened like in only 2 occasions for me anyway, so it's not like the game was constantly forcing me to have a certain pair of companions with me in certain missions. With the 3 different professional background options, each with their own prologues and unique dialogue options, your companions and their different skills, the choices you make in the game that affect the ending, and the fact that you can do each mission in whatever order you like, so the story is not even linear, you have quite a bit of replay value in Unavowed, which is very rare for traditional point-and-click adventure games. That being said, while you can definitely have two very different playthroughs, the endings were not as different as I would have wanted them to be. Officially the game has 4 endings, depending what you do at the end, but as I understand it, they can be altered a little with the choices you make throughout the game, by deciding whom you spare and whom you kill in order to complete your missions. But even though I killed and left different people or creatures alive in each playthrough, most choices of mine were barely recognized in the endings of my 2 playthroughs. The fates of some of the creatures who had caused trouble but I left alive were not even mentioned at all, and that was disappointing. And the 2, I guess you could say, bad endings were not as satisfying as the 2 good endings. So Unavowed is a very story-driven game when it comes to gameplay and overall puzzle design, the latter taking a backseat in this game. There's very few actual puzzles in the game and you don't even carry many items with you, usually around 2 or 3 most of the time. The game is more about simply talking to people, learning about them and other certain characters and events. If you are stuck and don't know what to do next, your best bet is to go back to talk to people you have already spoken with and see if you have got any new dialogue options and can ask them about something or someone you couldn't before. So there's going to be quite a bit of backtracking, talking to the same people again every time you learn new information about a person or an incident. Puzzles themselves are very easy, so much so that I felt like I was breezing through the game in many occasions. The quote-unquote toughest puzzles that I remember were your typical figure out the password or code to access this computer or door puzzles, which are not very interesting. And there is 3 of them in the game in total. So the puzzles are the game's weak point in my opinion, not being creative, fun or even memorable really. They are logical and work, so I don't have any complaints about them in that regard. But I understand that the game is about the story and characters first and foremost, and not so much about solving puzzles, and I can respect that. And besides, after playing so many item-heavy adventure games, like The Curse of Monkey Island, Toonstruck, Lisa Suit Larry and so on, where you can easily find yourself carrying a couple dozen items, playing Unavowed felt like a breath of fresh air to me, so the scarcity of puzzles didn't bother me personally. Of course, I must say a few words about the graphics and overall visuals in general. The pixel art of Unavowed is, as you can see, very well done. Those close-up looks of the characters look very detailed and expressive, and are brought to life even more by the stellar voice acting. And the scenery is very beautiful in some places with warm, pleasant colors. What's also pleasant, even soothing and sometimes unnerving is the atmospheric music composed by Thomas Regin, which I got to appreciate more in my second playthrough because I made a blind let's play of the first one, so I couldn't really just stop and listen at that time. During my second playthrough though, I did so a couple of times and listened to the jazzier tracks I really liked. After playing Unavowed, I can say that all those awards it got from Ackie Game Awards of 2018 were well deserved. The story is excellent with touching and even heartwarming moments, surprises and twists you won't see coming, the characters are very well written and voice acted, the setting is very intriguing with great and convincing world building, the game's pixel art looks beautiful, the music is fitting and atmospheric, and the game got lots of replay value, more than most point-and-click adventure games, due to the non-linear story, the fact that the missions can be done in multiple ways, and the tough choices you make throughout the game. However, judging from my 2 very different playthroughs, most of the choices you make are not even recognized in the ending, which to me anyway was slightly disappointing. But other than that, the endings themselves, 4 in total, concluded the story properly and left me satisfied, although the bad endings not as much as the good ones. The puzzles do not play a big role in the game, so if you like adventure games with lots of head-scratching, creative and fun puzzles, or items to pick up and use, Unavowed doesn't offer you that. But if you want to chill and play the game for the story without having to mess around with a couple dozen items in your inventory, Unavowed is a perfect game for you. although I would still highly recommend this game to any adventure game fan because, again, the story and characters are simply so good that I think you are doing yourself a disservice if you don't check out Unavowed. And there you go, folks. Those were my thoughts on Unavowed. What are your thoughts on the game? Let me know in the comments and thanks for watching.